ask you guys about this because this literally happened to me a couple days ago. And sometimes as a writer, I think sometimes we think like old ideas have died and then they're alive and well. So I was talking to someone, a fellow writer, about a student who had written something where the main characters were a married couple. And this writer made a comment to me, I don't know how this story can be any good because, this student's not married, so what would they know about married life or married couples or anything about that? And I was like, I had to bite my tongue. And I just like, I guess my first question is, have you guys run into a similar sort of reaction ever where someone tells you like, how can you write that? You don't have firsthand experience about this, so you have no business writing about this. I mean, is that something you've ever run into?
The curse of write what you know, because we've all heard it. Write what you know, write what you know. And it's complete and total bullshit.
It is.
It is ridiculous. Write what you can imagine, what you can think of, yeah. But write what you know? Oh, gosh.
Well, I'm going to argue that a little bit. I agree that anybody has seen people who are married. Your parents, possibly.
Right.
Good or bad. But you've seen other people who are married. So you have that experience. You know something about it. You do tend to write what you know, not in the case of what characters you use or what you're setting, but your worldview colors everything that you write. So in that sense, you basically can't write something that you don't know because you can't imagine it. Now, I can imagine a lot of stuff. I can't really, but there are things that I can't imagine because I don't know enough about it to imagine it. So in that sense, I did have somebody tell me one time that I could not write a children's book from the point of view of a dragon. They had to write it from the point of view of the little girl. But the dragon in question is a little girl at the time. So I decided that person's opinion was irrelevant.
Nice.
That wasn't the only thing I decided about her, but any rate.
Gail, we can all see you like shadow boxing over in the corner getting ready. So you want to?
It's my goodness.
Feel free to unload.
Oh, somebody told me that one time after I had just finished a story about werewolves and giant squids. And I thought, wow, really? Seriously? But the people who come in and just know things about writing, who have ever written anything, get on my absolute last nerve. How dare they tell me what I can write about, or any of us what we can write about, coming as they come from complete and total lack of knowledge. I have friends who never read fiction. How in the world? And yet they will comment on my work. One of the main ones was you use too many big words, so I bought him a dictionary.
Wow.
Oh yes.
Oh, yes, you know what I'm talking about, Charlotte.
I've told you about my 1-star review that I really like.
Oh, tell me.
That she couldn't understand. She was reading Maven Fairy Godmother. She couldn't understand what was going on. It's written at 4th grade reading level, at least for the word. 4th grade.
My favorite review, I did a fantasy called The God's Wives of Amun, set in ancient Egypt. And one of the reviews was that you can't, God doesn't have wives, so I'm not going to read this story.
Awesome.
And it was the God's Wives of Amun, but okay, good, don't read that story.
This is good. And the thing I find is that you're not my target audience. So please do not read my book.
And you can't
I will say, speaking of comments and people who don't read, our dearly beloved friend Richard does not read fantasy.
Yes.
He loves Maven Fairy Catmother. He loves the way it's written, and that means more to me than just about anything except getting money being paid for it.
Right.
Despite the typos, because he's got a copy of the book with all the typos in it, and he's making a list of them for me. And I said, good, when you get through, I'll make edition 3. but that he likes the writing despite, and he says, I can actually relate. Now keep in mind, we have a woman with no arms, a werebear, the son of Jack who climbed the beanstalk, a miller who's married to a water nix, and the water nix, of course, and the mouse queen and the mama bear are both rogue fairy godmothers. What is there for Richard to relate to? Of course, if you knew Richard, that makes more sense now that I think about it. But
my question is this, though, Charlotte: are you married to a water nix?
Not at the moment.
Well, then what the hell are you doing?
How can you write about it?
How dare you write about that? I can't take it seriously.
Well, don't. It's humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting back to the original topic. Yeah. That's
really.
If following this guy's logic, we can't do fantasy or science fiction because we need to write what we know.
We haven't been to. We haven't been.
I live in fantasy and science fiction. I live in fantasy and science fiction and stuff on as my brother says, my imaginary friends.
Yeah.
Who wants to live in the real world?
You're right. I have lived there since I saw Godzilla at the age of 4. That's where my head is. I completely believed giant monsters, and of course I write about them. Why not? That's part of my mindset.
Yeah, I
saw. Having written about this, I wrote a story with someone with epilepsy. Obviously, do I have epilepsy? No. And I wrote a story with siblings. Do I have siblings? No. But I can research and talk to people who have those and learn it. And not only can I use my imagination, but I can use my ability to learn. It's. Sorry, Lewis, go ahead.
No, I don't know. I don't know what people are thinking whenever. First of all, I do know. I know the kind of person that would say that kind of thing. And you mentioned it in your notes to us. They wear a little something right here. Generally. Yeah. For those of us who haven't heard me rant nonstop about this
never gets old.
Group of people I refer to as the Elbow Patch Brigade. And these are folks who have just basically lost their minds and souls to the university system. And in the university system, you learn lots of theory. And I can always spot an MFA student because they're generally the ones that tell me you can't do that when you're telling a story, because they have a checklist and they've learned theory about what they should be doing and what they can and can't do when they're writing. And all that does is just create a very narrow space in which to create. And they've had theory upon theory piled upon them. And one of the things you learn from guys who've never written a single fictitious word in their life, you hear that phrase, write what you know. And it's a terrible piece of advice. Terrible.
Horrible.
I think you preempted my next question, because that was really what fascinated me. Like, where does this come from? This, write what you know, ideology, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that is, so in other words, it's kind of inculcated from a very strict system. Is that what you would say?
And it's a system that the funny thing is they tell you write what you know, and yet this is a system that does not encourage self-awareness. This is tangential to the topic, but I've recently seen this happen. When you posted this the other day, it was within 48 hours of me seeing 3 separate posts where people talked about they have an MFA in creative writing. They can't understand why they're not writing better.
Why they're not published. I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And all of that. And it's like they're unaware of the fact that just because you have a degree, getting that piece of paper didn't magically turn you into a writer. Mm-hmm. And sitting there and learning theory in classrooms, even if you're writing something, you're still learning, and you're not going to be at the level, like somebody was talking about. They wrote their story, they put it in, like, I think it's Grammarly or one of them, and then they got back a bunch of stuff saying this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and they were upset. Well, I have an MFA, and it's like, nobody cares. all that means is you pretty, you kind of wasted 4 years or 5 years. Actually, if you got an MFA, you probably 5 or 6 years, getting a degree in creative writing. That's like getting a degree in basket weaving.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Let me speak to that because, I want to establish my bona fides.
Absolutely.
I have a BS in English, how appropriate.
Yeah.
I have a degree in secondary education, a MAD, and I have a master's degree in humanities in mythology. Didn't teach me a damn thing about how to write fiction.
Exactly.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It didn't teach me a whole lot about how to write in English, just to write academic papers. I got pretty good at doing it, but nobody ever taught me any of that.
Right.
So when people ask me should they major in English or something if they want to be writers, I said, hell no. Find something that'll give you a job that you can afford to take time off to write. Be a plumber, be an electrician, do HVAC.
Yeah.
Do something that will allow you to work and make good damn money so that when you do come home, you're not fried by staring at a computer screen all day.
John, I mean, a good example, John, you and your wife both are librarians, right? Or you have a background in library sciences. That's connected to books, connected to writing, connected to all these things. But it's a practical thing. It's something very, very useful. Whereas, a degree in creative writing. I guess people think they get that degree and then because when you get a degree like in accounting or chemistry, by the time you're done, you're qualified to work in those fields. And I suppose they think that I've gotten a degree in creative writing, I'm now qualified to be a writer. I think it's the same thing, but I don't think they realize. Again, this is all, it's theory. They've had all this theory just pumped into them, and they don't have a lot of practical. I would rather than talk to an English professor who has studied stories, because studying a story and writing a story are two different things. You're using two different parts of your brain.
Absolutely.
And because my background's in English as well. Now, I don't have nearly Charlotte's bona fides, but that, like an idiot, I did English I didn't finish, but I mean, I did English as my degree plan, and you study literature, but it's not the same thing. And you get this guy sitting there he's written a bunch of academic papers, and he doesn't know the first thing about it. I have a friend of mine a couple of years ago. He recently published. He's been working on this philosophy book for like a decade, and he published that. And all of a sudden, it was like he's going to buy me a pack of gum and tell me how to chew it. And it's like you write philosophy, but he tried to tell me something about writing fiction, and I'm like, wow, I would never presume to tell you anything about philosophy. But thank you for telling me all about how to write a story. Yeah. So you run into that. I would much rather find the old guy that's like in a cramped New York apartment, chain smoking all day. When he talks to you, he sounds like this. I want that guy to tell me how to write. The guy that still hasn't transitioned from typewriters. I want that guy telling me everything. I'll take notes from him.
Yeah.
But somebody sitting around going, well, J.D. Salinger. I don't give a shit. You've heard a story about J.D. Salinger. I want to hear, I want to read his biography where he's talking about how he did something. That is how you learn how to be a good writer. You learn by doing and by absorbing.
Well, and part of it maybe stems from the fact that in the educational system, it's encouraged that the teacher is the source of all knowledge. Whereas in the real world, like the four of us are collaborating all the time in the sense that we're always sharing ideas, always changing each other's opinions or coloring each other's perspectives based on the new stuff we run into. And we don't agree on everything. We debate and have disagreements. Whereas in a lot of educational systems like that English professor, his ideas are never challenged. And so the longer he teaches, the longer he is reinforced like that. I know everything. I don't need help from outside. You know, that sense of curiosity is actually encouraged to die in that sort of system.
Exactly.
So I think that's part of it.
You know, at the university level, you know, they're really the real function of a tertiary education is intense, like, critical thinking skills.
Yes.
That's what you're taught. You know, you leave college really just knowing how to think critically, which is an amazing skill to have. But it doesn't have, there's not a lot there that like practical application of like the various things that you're taught. You know, of course, if you have a degree in chemistry, you know how to, you know, mix chemicals. Look at me doing the mad scientist mixing chemicals.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're an accountant, but what happens is you get out in the world and nobody sticks you on like the big project right off the bat. They put you in what would amount to an apprenticeship, and you slowly work your way into the system, how things are done. You learn on the job. You probably learn more on the job than you do in most other cases, you know. Yeah.
And that's a lot of professions where
because imagine if we put people through medical school and all we did was tell them, well, this is how the this is how the liver's supposed to work, this is how the duodenum functions, you know, and God, going out there and save somebody's life, and they've never you know, seen anybody's liver up close. That's kind of what having an MFA in creative writing is good for, is, you know, you've never seen the guts of a story if all you've done is write stories for your professor, you know. That's me.
So yeah, no, this has been great. I think because you guys have all been as passionate as I thought you would be. Just to kind of wrap up, is there anything you would say, so the next time you overhear or have someone say to you something about the whole from that write what you know only perspective, is there a comeback or a, you know, sort of a one-liner that you would say to kind of dispel that prejudice, or like how, like is there, like, to the writers out there who are maybe viewing this and say like, well, how should I respond to that? What would you recommend?
Oh, what did you write lately?
Yeah.
Obviously, I know a lot more than you do.
Or in my particular case, how do you know I'm not a fairy godmother?
Yeah, exactly.
I like that one actually a lot.
Be careful, I'll turn you into a freaking frog.
I just tell somebody to go fuck themselves.
I'm
too old for that.
Answer. I can rely on you for that.
Always works. Yeah.
I've heard it too much. I've heard too many people try to tell me how to do my job, you know, and I'm done.
I guess sometimes you think that the bad ideas could just die and go away, but I guess sometimes it's like a bad penny. They come back up, don't they?
Yeah, I don't know how that one keeps proliferating. You know, honestly, the worst thing I ever wrote was a write what you know kind of thing. I wrote right before when I first came back. There was 7 years where I didn't publish, and when I first came back, the very first thing I wrote was about 120,000 word novel about a writer. And what I found out is the 7 years I was gone from publishing, the publishing industry had changed completely. So all of my ideas I'd pumped into this thing, writing what I know, they were about 7 years they were out of date, big time. Yeah. And luckily, if GAIL hadn't swooped in and said, oh my God, there's this publisher looking for books, go put your hat in the ring, you know, I might have taken that book and really worked on it and tried to get it published. And it would have been an act of futility.
It almost sounds like
it was garbage. It was garbage.
It almost sounds like what our motto should be is actually write what you don't know, because that's how you learn and grow as a writer.
Exactly. That's how you challenge yourself. If I have to go look things up and read books and whatnot, that I notice it whenever I'm writing it. My story feels fuller when I have to, you know, that's one of the reasons why I like using scientific and historical data because it really fleshes out what I'm trying to do.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
All right. Well, we covered that topic. That's for sure.